Love is a unifying force. In pure being, it is complete and it most powerfully unites individual minds and bodies with society and the environment. Dr. Tony Nader. Welcome to the sixth session of our special assembly on the future of the worldwide TM organization. Yesterday, we applied the knowledge of consciousness to habit change and went back to the roots of the ancient Vedic knowledge and how it is passed on through the generations through the Vedic tradition of consciousness. Today, we will explore the application of the knowledge of consciousness to create happy relationships. And later on, hear more about exciting projects from around the world, including the David Lynch Foundation. And joining us again live is Dr. Tony Nader. We will begin today's session with an inspiring video of the highlights of Dr. Nader's talk on relationships that is also a sneak preview of the Consciousness Applied course. I'm happy to hand it over now to Damien Lodge, who will introduce the video to us and then dive right into a full, beautiful session with Dr. Tony Nader and other speakers that I'll introduce to you shortly. Over to you, Damien.
Thank you, Anna Marika. So today's video from the Consciousness Applied course is on relationships. As always, Dr. Tony Nader takes the big picture to look at the full details and the finest details of consciousness in terms of the self. Just as a reminder, what we're looking at now is a condensed 30-minute version of this consciousness applied lesson. The original webinar was 2 hours long, so it's in a condensed format here. And what we've done is, in the original lesson, Dr. Nader describes consciousness as a field through the understanding brought to light by Maharshi's technologies, and equates the relationships with this field, explaining that relationships exist in the primordial level between all people and all things in this unseen level. Dr. Nader comments that the highest relationship is the relationship with the self, which is cultured and nurtured through transcendental meditation. Throughout all of these lessons, of course, we go into detail with how the transcendental meditation impacts these values of applied consciousness. This lesson, in particular, contains detailed description of higher states in consciousness in terms of the relationship of oneself and transcendental consciousness with the outside world and how we can live transcendental consciousness when engaged in the world with cosmic consciousness, and the refinement of that cosmic consciousness into God consciousness and ultimately in unity consciousness, Brahmi Chetna, for the ultimate experience of the self as everything. Dr. Nader describes this in a very special and detailed way, and when we were working with our wonderful, talented video editing team in Jalal, he was even saying it was such a difficult thing for him to edit this video because anything he thought to remove seems like such a wonderful nugget of technology, of description of everything. So it was quite difficult to find what should be kept in and what should be taken out. But in the end, we settled on just having some of the concepts from this video, which even those who have been in the organization for a very long time might not have heard. So there's something new there for everyone. So if you're watching this and you're a new meditator or haven't been exposed to some of these concepts, if it seems quite deep and profound and like a lot to take in, don't worry, just enjoy and know that in the full course there's a more complete and well-established foundation for all of these ideas that is explained by Dr. Nader in the 2-hour version. So I think without further ado, we can have the video from the Applied Consciousness lesson on relationships.
Thank you all for joining this very important subject, the subject of relationships. We're going to discuss why this is important. We're going to see what is the nature of relationships, what are the building blocks of a relationship, which means what are the constituents of a relationship, and how each constituent can be improved so that the wholeness of a relationship is improved. And also how to help relationships be stable, be fulfilling, and allow us to grow and fulfill the purpose of being in a relationship. I like to always start in those types of discussion by giving the big picture. And ultimately, we are planning in the what we call Super Habits program with the consciousness advisors. We are planning a full course on relationship where one takes many of those principles that we will discuss today and some more also, potentially, and take them step by step and have exercises and practice sessions where you would make sure that you become a master of relationship for life to be a fullness and wholeness that is our birthright, which we have been given because we have this human physiology that can transcend, that can experience on a high level of consciousness. So our paradigm actually is all based on relationship when you look deeply in it. And life is based on relationship. So that really puts relationship on a very fundamental level of our existence, of our being, of the meaning of life. And that starts from the nature of life, the nature of ultimate reality. Ultimate reality, as you might know from the paradigms we talk about and present, which is what we feel is the real ultimate reality of life, is consciousness. Ultimate reality is a field of consciousness, a field of pure being, which is non-material. So a field is something that is like an ocean, and that ocean has its waves, and these waves are what we see on the surface value. So consciousness is an ocean of being. And it has a quality, we call it consciousness, because it has a nature. Its nature is to be conscious, obviously, because that's why we're calling it consciousness. So what is it conscious of? It is conscious of itself. And that is beautifully explained by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who brought to light this knowledge and explained it in a very systematic way. That consciousness, looking at itself, so self-reflection, sees itself from the perspective of a seer that sees, from the perspective of an object, because what is one conscious of must be conscious of something, and there is an object of consciousness, and the relationship between the object and the seer, the object and the knower. So to be conscious requires these three values. Even in the language that we have in grammar and all that, we have generally three values. We have a knower or a subject. We have a known, which is the object or that which is connected. And we have the verb. The verb is that which connects the knower or describes the knower to an object or to a quality. So these values are very fundamental. And therefore, the beginning of manifestation, the beginning of actually reality, even before the Big Bang, is a relationship. And that relationship is of consciousness with itself. So that unbounded ocean of consciousness reflects on itself, sees itself, and sees itself as these three-in-one structure of knower, knowing, and known. And when they come together, they form that reality, which we call a relationship. A relationship. So the first relationship we have, and the first relationship we will always have, is with ourselves. So that ultimately, the purpose of creation, the purpose of life, the purpose of manifestation is to rediscover who we truly are and know that we are the unbounded ocean of consciousness. So manifest world starts with small bits of consciousness. They add up together. Bit of consciousness meaning a group that is constituted by a knower, a knowing, and a known. And the more we add these moments of experience, we gain more and more knowledge, we get more and more broader awareness, until we reach the ability to know the full reality of life. And so the purpose of manifestation is ultimately to experience fullness of life, fullness of all possibilities, and know reality, which is an unbounded ocean of consciousness. Now, bear with me a little bit. This might be theoretical, but some of us are maybe interested in this perspective as a prelude to going deeper into it. But for now, just let's say that we grow in life through experiences that we learn, that accumulate gradually and broaden our awareness. So our consciousness, our awareness gets broader and broader the more we have knowledge of specific values and obviously the knowledge of ultimately the self. The second point is that the more we have these moments of experience, so the more we have these moments of relationship, and I'm dividing those relationship into moments because after all, we say, of course, I have a relationship with my friend, I have a relationship with my children, but you live this relationship through moments of experience with them, through moments of interaction with them. And these moments add up for you to ultimately make you grow and make you evolve. So all relationships ultimately are about growth and development of consciousness, of awareness, of knowledge, of understanding. And therefore, these three components are fundamental. So our relationships in life, even when we come to specific values that we will discuss, will always depend on these three values. What do I see with myself? Who am I? What is my relationship with myself? Am I seeing from a clear perspective? Am I seeing from a holistic perspective? Do I know that I am the ocean? On an actual experiential level, not just an intellectual thinking, but intellectual thinking help us. Do I transcend? Do I get into that state? Then the second level, how is my connection to the other aspects of life? That is the process of knowing. And the third is, do I know that others are also myself? And are my relationships growing in the direction of creating that wholeness, of creating that oneness, or enabling us to experience that oneness as a whole? And this is really becomes the basis of good and bad, evil, not evil, purpose, what is the meaning of good and bad and all that. And that gives us a very simple reference. Anything you do, anything you interact with, anything step you have in life that grows and allows you to grow in this relationship where you can see yourself as wholeness and you can see everything as yourself is going to be on the right direction. Anything that breaks that possibility or hampers it, puts an obstacle to it, is not in the right direction. So that is why killing, stealing, doing wrong things are not helpful, because they break that possibility of growing in wholeness, of growing in oneness, of ultimately reaching the ultimate purpose of life and the ultimate purpose of why we are here, which by itself gives greater happiness, greater enjoyment. So it has wonderful positive benefits to grow in oneness. It's not some obligation or some necessity to do something in spite of yourself. Actually, it's something that allows you to grow and expand and feel happier and more fulfilled and more bliss in life. So now having looked at it from this general perspective, we want to ask ourselves, how can we improve ourselves? How we can, from specific values. Let me first say that we usually judge ourselves from our intentions. However, our intentions are not obvious. They don't come out obvious. So what will people judge us? It's really based on our actions, on what we do, and how we listen, how we talk, how we interact. And so this we have to keep in mind, that it's not enough to have a good intention. It is very important in building a good relationship to have the proper speech, the proper action, and sometimes most importantly, the ability to listen to the others. So based on that, let's look at these three components of relationship and see how we can improve each one of them separately. Of course, when you improve one, all of them gets improved simultaneously. And we, just for the sake of having structure, we look first at the knower. Now, in the ancient literature, as taught by Maharishi, the knower is usually called Rishi, the one who is the witness, who is seeing, who is the seer. So as far as we are concerned, we are the knower. We are the one in the relationship that is the one that experiences it, the one that lives it, the one that judges it, the one that connects with it, and the one that's most influenced personally by it. Of course, we influence others also. But as far as the knower, we know that the best way to improve the knower is to transcend and go to the ocean of consciousness. This we have achieved, and we can come back to it because at every level, it has importance and it has meaning. So what is the knower? The knower, the Rishi, is the one who is knowing. So we have to be reminding ourselves that we are the knower and how we can improve ourselves by being the best knower possible. Best knower possible is the unbounded ocean of consciousness, of course. I say it again because it's very important. But on the surface level, what people see from us as a knower, how they appreciate us as a knower, they ask if we are actually listening, if we are open, if we listen to the other. So very important in a relationship, the ability to listen, the ability to be a true knower. And here you have to ask yourselves, and as we go along, you can make this as a little exercise, what kind of listener you are, what kind of knower you are. So ask yourself, when you are listening to somebody, am I ignoring them? Am I just sitting there worried about myself and not listening at all? This is one way of not listening, actually, and that will never help a relationship. Or maybe, you've learned that you can do it and you start kind of pretending, you make believe. You make believe that you are listening, you can nod your head, you can, say yeah, but you're really not listening at all. That is better than completely ignoring, because completely ignoring is quite offensive and destroys already possibility of relationship in a sense. But pretending is a little bit kind of also not so good, of course, but it's just one step a little higher than totally ignoring in a rude way. But that's not what's going to build a good relationship. What we want is to build the best relationship. And the best relationships that we have is most important for us after all, because this is our own growth, this is our own understanding, and life offers us opportunities all the time. Now, the best way to be attentive is not to be stressed and strained and having worries. So again, when you transcend and clear up your mind, you practice transcendental meditation morning and evening, you are fresh, you are clear, and your attention comes in a very natural way. And that is very important, attentive listening. So you really are attending to the person, and that is beautiful. But there is even a higher level than that. And that's what we can call empathetic listening, which means you listen with care. You listen to know, what does the person, what can I do more? What can I help? How can I understand more? How can I make this moment successful as a relation, taking into consideration the full value of that individual? You can realize already that this empathetic listening is more in the direction of unity that we established as a background for our understanding of the purpose of our relationship, that we can grow in unity, and that whatever allows us to grow in unity helps us to evolve ourselves. And so when you are actually open to the other, it's like you are listening to yourself in a different format. You are taking the other as if yourself. And that is what empathy is about. And that can happen only really when you are more and more established in consciousness. When you are established in well-being in yourself, then you are not afraid of going out of yourself. And you're not afraid to embrace the other and to take them in. That's why, again, when the knower is most established in oneself, then you have the highest value. Oftentimes I'm asked, what is the best experience you've ever had with Maharishi, or that strikes you, or when you met Maharishi, what did you feel? And for me, and I say it all the time, it is that when I met Maharishi, I felt that the whole universe had stopped. This was the first time. I was right next to him, looking into his eyes. I had offered him like a flower. We used to do that in terms of just an expression of respect and gratitude and goodness. And Maharishi looked at me, and I felt literally that the whole universe stopped, and that the entire attention of consciousness was on me. It gave me such a sense of being, such a sense of importance, such a sense of him truly wanting to know me, to talk to me, to experience who I am. And that really filled my heart and my mind. And that was really very, very, very important. And that is a crucial thing as a basic value in our understanding of the importance of listening, importance of having the attention in the most highest possible way to make the relationship start on a wonderful and great footings. So how can we become a better listener? There are tricks we can do. You know, a common danger in this regard is actually to assume that you know it all. So one needs really to accept that one is not expert in all matters of life, and be prepared to listen to others. A deaf ear is a sign of closed mind. So when you are all in yourself, you are not taking really any opportunities. Because listening actually generates ideas. Science has shown that when people talk together and solve a problem together, they are much more intelligent than as an individual thinking alone and trying to be themselves, not a listener, not a person who takes other things into consideration. They're stuck with their own ideas. So this is about the knower. All of these are hints and ideas about what one can do in terms of improving that component of the relationship, which is the knower, which is, of course, ourselves. In any case, even as we pass on to the process of knowing, it will always be something you have to do and you have to think about. But as we go to the process of knowing, which means how you connect to the other, and the process of knowing in the Vedic literature as described by Maharishi is called Devata. We said the knower is the Rishi. The process of knowing is that Devata quality, that connectedness, what connects the subject to the object. And here we have to always remember that the heart comes before the head. So you have first to touch people's heart before you ask them for a hand. This is the law of connection. You can't move people to action unless you first move them with emotion. The heart comes before the head, it's said. And that is something very, very true. And here in this regard, with regard to connectedness and connection, there are certain things which are very important. For example, respect. This is really the starting point of a good relationship. So you respect the people that you meet, even before they have necessarily earned it. This is very important. We feel that people, they have to earn our respect, which is right. But start with respect, even before they have earned it. That is really a very powerful aspect in a relationship. And on the other hand, we should expect to earn our respect from them for ourselves. So, whereas we start by respecting others, our feeling would be, I have to earn somebody's respect. So in terms of respect, this is very important. Now, in this case, we've talked about relationships, and there are so many kinds of relationships. You have a relationship with your children, relationship with your workers, your relationship at work, in the business, your boss, your like that, and all of that. And one of the most important relationships is certainly the one that is most intimate, and usually the relationship at home. And there are sayings that say something like, succeed at home and all other relationships become easier, which is very important. And for that, again, the same principles apply. Remember to express appreciation for each other and structure your life to spend time together. Time is very important, and that's part of enjoying together, doing things together. And when crises arise, see how you can deal with it in the most positive way. Already one thing very important is attack the problem, never the person. Attack the problem, never the person. Even if the problem seems to come from the person, don't go onto the person. Attack the problem. Solve the problem. Get all the facts. List the options. Think what you're thinking. What are the possibilities? Choose the best solution. Look for the positives sometimes in the problem. There are problems that actually create potentialities for growth. And above all, never withhold love. While one might be upset and frustrated, even angry, one should always think to love and to connect in an even unconditional way. And for that, communicate. Communication is very important. And I want to quote also another saying by Josh McDowell, which is very interesting. And he says, the greatest thing a father can do for his children is to love their mother. And of course, reciprocally also that goes. That is to say, the importance of your intimate life. The most intimate life builds a character, builds a basis for your bigger relationships. And so if you are in a situation of leadership and you ask, how can I serve my people most? What is the best way? Is that you've got to love your people. It's very simple. And you've got to love the people more than your position. Maharishi has really created the structure of Rajas with great dignities and Rajajeshwaris and given them honor and all of that. But he said it's a parental role. It's a role of service. It's a role where people are more important than position. It's the goal which is more important than specific honors or specific positions. And now the known, how to improve the known, which means the other part, the object. What can we do? Of course, we don't have direct impact to change the situation of others in certain circumstances, but we can do a lot so that the other enters into the relationship in the best possible way. And all of these points that we've discussed are very important in that. First, if we are settled within ourselves, we're transcending, we're clear, we go back to the inner self, we experience pure being. That is already a platform which the other will actually feel. And that is a very important part in the preparation for how others will deal with us. And there is a saying which I think comes from Theodore Roosevelt that has become famous in many ways. And it says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So you can already change people by letting them know, or the ability to making them know, by listening, by questioning in the right way, by having the right attitude, by respect, by all the points that we have said. You are changing the object of knowledge. You are changing the person. You're changing their attitude towards you. And this is not on the basis of you knowing so much, but you caring so much. You're caring about them. People want to be cared for. Why people fail to understand each other? And there are things that we know. There is fear of the other, the sense of what are you going to take away from me? And there is self-centeredness. You know, most human beings are inclined to put their own interest ahead of others, and we should be prepared for that. The best antidote for self-centeredness is to try oneself and put oneself in the other person's position, trying to view the world from the other's perspective. If you are at home, you see from the other person's at home, from the child's perspective, from the parent's perspective. If you are at work, see it from the boss perspective, see it from the worker perspective, from the people who are helping perspective. How do they see things? And that is allowing us to change already the other's attitude when we ourselves are trying to understand the object from the object's perspective. And here I'm calling it object. It's just the other person, of course, with whom the relationship is available. And accept differences. This is very important. Should be able to see differences. Don't force yourself into saying they must be like you, and therefore that's how they see. Seeing from another's perspective is actually being able to appreciate differences, as well as to acknowledge similarities and know that there are some similarities, and that is how you can think of others. So, about people, which is the object of the relationship, there are some things we need to understand. And these things are very basic. Everybody wants to be somebody. Everybody wants to be somebody. If you treat every person you meet as if he or she or they were the most important person in the world, you'll communicate that they are somebody to you. personally. And I gave that example with Maharishi when I met him, and he had this flood of attention. I felt like he really treated me as somebody. It's not that I was nobody in my mind, of course. I knew I was a doctor already, finishing my medical school, and I had my own successes, my own life. But at that one experience, it felt really so special because it was the flood of consciousness that awakened in me that sense of wholeness. And again, I want to repeat this. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Everybody needs somebody. Everybody can be somebody when somebody understands and believes in them. And anybody who helps somebody actually influences a lot of people. So that is very precious in terms of our relation to others and in terms of encouraging others. Because people, believe it or not, don't all have faith in themselves. They always kind of doubting themselves. They feel like they've not spoken the right way. They have not done this right thing. They're not capable this way. Even the most successful people, even the champions, they still feel I could have done better. I could be better. Am I all my potential? And how to develop the full potential is again to go back and be the ocean of consciousness, transcend all limitations, and know you are everything. You are the fullness of all that is possible. You are the ocean of consciousness. Love yourself and love the others as yourself. Have faith in them. Give them the sense of trust, and you will make them a better object of your consciousness. And so you got the idea. It's the same thing. Grow, be good, be healthy, be happy. And that can be happening always on the level of a platform of fullness of being, a fullness of knowing who you are, that you are the ocean, and that ocean is infinite. So all love, all flow can flow from it, and it never dries because it's infinite. So never restrict, never restrain yourself from giving. And there is a saying in the ancient traditions of the Veda, Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamodachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate. It's a long Sanskrit phrase, but what it says is, this is fullness and that is fullness, and when fullness is taken out of fullness, what remains is fullness. So be the ocean, the infinite, unbounded ocean of being and love and care, and understand yourself to be that, love yourself, and don't restrict your ability to give and love and grow, because that will never dry out. To the contrary, the more you give, the bigger you are. Thank you for your listening. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you, Dr. Nader, for this really beautiful and profound talk on really the connection of consciousness with the self and in relationships. And it's a real joy just knowing and experiencing firsthand how it feels when you yourself put your full attention and love and care onto everyone who you are speaking with and to. So thank you so much for this inspiration. Now we'll dive into an interactive session on hacks for happy relationships and an introduction to the Super Relationship Program with Dr. Vicky Broom and Miriam Lodge. And of course, Dr. Nader will join for a live Q&A session that will follow this next part of the session. So first of all, let me introduce you to Dr. Vicky Broom, who is joining us today online. Dr. Vicky Broom has a doctorate and master's degree and is trained both in Western and consciousness-based psychology. She focused on relationships very early on in her career, writing her thesis on marriage relationships. This is published in the Scientific Research on the Transcendental Meditation in TM City program, Collected Papers, Volume 7. She has also recently co-written the chapter on qualities of the physician and the doctor-patient relationship in Ayurveda in the textbook Principles and Practice of Integrative Ayurveda with Dr. Robert Schneider, MD, that is due to be published by Oxford University Press soon. She is also an international administrator for the TM organization in South Africa, among other countries, and has taught many thousands of people transcendental meditation and its advanced techniques, and she is a TM city administrator as well. She's also the co-director of Thinking Skills Training, a training company which has delivered international management workshops over many decades. Dr. Vicky has changed many lives through various relationship programs in the private and corporate sectors over decades. The success of these relationship programs was built on two things. Firstly, her wealth of experience from decades of working with individuals and psychology clients, and secondly, on her ability to incorporate the mind-body wellness tools that she has also trained as a mind-body wellness expert. So without further ado, welcome and thank you so much, Dr. Broom, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Anna Mareka, and welcome to everybody for the Super Relationships talk. It's so great to be here with you all today. Now, the Super Habits for Happy Relationships program was developed together with other global experts in the field of relationships, but primarily it is my truly great honor to work with our inspiration and co-creator of this program, Dr. Tony Nader, who we've just all listened to and all, I think, been so moved by this wonderful talk we've just listened to, by his deep wisdom on relationships. Thank you so much, Dr. Nader. And as we know by now, Dr. Tony Nader is the global leader of the Transcendental Meditation Program. He has already been beautifully introduced. But apart from being a great, really great inspirational leader, enlightened leader, he's an amazing person. And when you watch him interact with people, he's a real example of someone who just lives super relationships constantly. Now, if you want to really know yourself, I really recommend his new book, Consciousness is All There Is. And just before we go into the Super Relationships course, I also just wanted to say how excited my husband, Dr. Richard Broom, and I are about Dr. Nader's new direction for the TM organization. Now, Maharishi has always said it doesn't matter why people learn TM. And from my experience of teaching TM to more than 13,000 people, so I really know why people sign up for TM. You know, the way in which Dr. Nader is focusing the organization to be the market leader in the consciousness market, you know, helping people with whatever they need, while not changing anything for people who just want to learn TM. It's just brilliant. So it's the start of a wonderful new phase where we'll be able to help a lot more people and also help our existing meditators in a more profound way. Okay, now many people consider relationships to be, if not the most essential vehicle for growth, at least the top maybe 2 or 3. And of course, I'm going to be talking about all kinds of relationships, you know, friends, work colleague, family, romantic relationships, all kinds of relationships we're talking about. Because when our relationships are difficult, it consumes us. It can affect our health. It can affect our ability to grow. So fulfilling relationships are a really important foundation for a happy life and also part of our growth to enlightenment. Now, to make today useful and practical as much as possible, we're going to start with a self-reflection exercise. So you can put it in the chat if you want, or if you wanted to keep it more private, you can write it on a piece of paper. And those of you sitting there at Meru, maybe put it in your phone, but do it, okay? First of all, are there any relationships that you would like to improve? And what would you like to improve about them? So take a moment, put that down. Are there any relationships you'd like to improve? What would you like to improve? Think about the impact. What impact would this have on your life if this relationship was improved? You can put it in the chat box if you want to. Okay. All right, now the second thing I'd like you to make a note of is what has been keeping you from improving the relationship? You know, what is the bottleneck here? Thank you for those of you who are putting it into the chat box. Thank you. It takes courage, but it helps to make the relationship, make the workshop more relevant. Thank you. People are talking about relationships at work, or in fact, with parents, immediate family. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Right, great. Thank you. Now, the goal for today is because we only have a certain amount of time. I want to explore with you briefly the origins of consciousness-based relationships. And after that, I'll be able to explain to you what consciousness-based relationships are, because we're not just talking about relationships, we're talking about consciousness-based relationships. So, and secondly, I want to share a couple of hacks with you so that you could maybe start implementing in your life straight away. Although Dr. Nader has just given us many, many, many wonderful tips, hundreds of hacks. So thank you for that. All right, so now let's put this relationship talk into perspective. What I'm often asked is, what are consciousness-based relationships? Now, this approach comes from consciousness-based psychology, or we could call it Vedic psychology, which is part of Ayurvedic medicine, which is the oldest system of healthcare in the world. Ayurveda is a mind-body therapy. You can't heal the body unless you heal the heart. So there's a very strong relationship between psychology, emotions, and physical health. Actually, the emotional and psychological aspects of Ayurveda are the least understood, and in my opinion, one of the most important aspects, and definitely an essential for healthy relationships. Most people look to modern psychology to solve their relationship problems. Modern psychology primarily maintains a dichotomy between mind and body. Consciousness-based psychology maintains that consciousness is the basis of mind and body. We can say a little bit more about that in a moment. Now, in Dr. Nader's new book, Consciousness is All That There Is, it's sort of like a textbook for the subject. And in it, he describes how the nature of consciousness is bliss. Now, if we want to experience bliss in our lives and in our relationships, which we all do, we need to be connected to it. The bliss inside ourselves is healing in itself. Consciousness-based relationships actually responding to today's need for a more spiritual and holistic type of relationship therapy. You know, as world consciousness has been rising, there's a much greater awareness of our human potential, not just for experiencing normal adaptive states and normal adaptive behavior, but for more mystical experiences, experiences of the higher self, for a more spiritual perspective on human growth and relationships. You know, what are enlightened relationships? So today, when people go and see a helping professional, they want answers to these questions. They want to explore these kinds of things. And by the way, consciousness-based or Vedic psychology wasn't the only thing that came out or emerged out of this rising world consciousness, because the whole of transpersonal psychology also responded to the need for a more spiritual psychology. But I think that the main thing that Vedic psychology or consciousness-based psychology has really added is an understanding that the mind is hierarchically structured from concrete to abstract. This is also a common understanding in Western psychology. The mind has conscious, subconscious, unconscious. However, what consciousness-based psychology uniquely adds is the understanding of a more subtle level than the unconscious mind, the level of pure consciousness. It's a really crucial contribution to the whole field of psychology and to the whole field of consciousness-based relationships. People need to know they are the whole ocean and not just the wave on the surface of it. Now, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the most recent of the really great Vedic seers, added a theory of consciousness that also describes 3 higher states of consciousness based on this purely transcendental, non-conceptual mode of experience or pure consciousness, which he describes so clearly when he describes his 7 states of consciousness. It took a fully enlightened seer like him to clarify this because he could describe so clearly the experience of these 7 states of consciousness, which is our human potential. It's our birthright. But you can't even think about that unless you have access to pure consciousness and you stabilize that regularly and start to live it. So as we access pure consciousness, it has a really important impact on our personal relationships. Now let's take relationships or relationship wellness as being on a continuum. So I'm putting my arms out here. Let's say on the one end, right at the one end, you have pathological, neurotic, toxic relationships, okay? And then in the middle, we reach a point where the relationship is considered adaptive. You know, people can maintain a relationship. They're not a risk to themselves. They're not a risk to other people. Now, very often that's just considered sufficient. But we don't want to just go to that middle point where our relationships are just adaptive. We want to take our relationship right to the other end of the continuum, to the point where they actually become a mechanism for both parties to be the best versions of themselves and to facilitate self-actualization for both. Now, let's look at a few of the hacks that we've chosen that can help improve your relationships and hopefully can be useful straight away. But as a high-level principle, underlying all the hacks, we want to share the idea that you aim to not let people pull you into their storm, but instead, we want to pull them into our peace. Okay, so here we have our 4 hacks. The first one is relationships start with the self. Let's look at some of the qualities of people who really do have good relationships. Look for the face behind the face, and forgiveness as a major relationship strategy. Okay, and this leads beautifully into our first hack. Hack 1, relationships start with the self. Now, the word for good health in Ayurveda is svasta, and it's translated to mean established in the self. In today's terminology, anchored in the self. You can't run away from your relationships. Okay, the first relationship is always going to be with the self, as Dr. Tony Nader said. You have to be in a good relationship with yourself because let's say you can't run away from it. And, you know, it was Confucius, the Chinese philosopher, who said, wherever you go, there you are. So you take yourself with you, and you can only be to others as you are to yourself. We don't see things as they are. We see them as we are. You will earn the respect of all people if you earn the respect of yourself. Every relationship is a relationship with myself. And every relationship is showing me who I am. Okay, so as Dr. Nader said, do I know who I am? Do I know I am the ocean? Do I know that you are the ocean? Now, here's another very important thing. All circumstances are the portal to the self and the doorway to good relationships. So wherever you start from, because we're listening from a lot of different places, there are about 700 or more, if you take probably about 800 or 900 people listening to this. All circumstances are going to be that opening to good relationships. So when you work on relationships, you start from where you are. You know, there's a lovely story that illustrates this. There's the story of 10 men who are swimming across the Ganges. And as they were swimming, the current becomes very high. So when they reached the other side, they decided to check if all the men had made it. And they all started to count. And whoever counted only came up with 9. And they were beginning to grieve and prepare for the funeral when they realized that whoever was counting was forgetting to count themselves. So the moral of the story is that if we forget ourselves, we will suffer. And of course, consequently, our relationships will suffer. Now, with consciousness-based psychology, the goal is complete recovery. And recovery from what? From a fractured sense of self. We are here to remember who we truly are and know that we are the unbounded ocean of consciousness, and then carry that best version of ourselves into our relationships. So what constitutes a healthy relationship? The purpose of a relationship is to produce bliss simultaneously within ourselves and others. You can tell if it's a healthy, healing relationship if it is nourishing to both. Simple. That's it. If your relationships are not doing that, they're not completely healthy. And just to repeat a little bit what Dr. Tony Nader said, anything or anyone you interact with that allows you to grow through the relationship, where you can see yourself as wholeness and you can see everything as yourself, that's going to be the right direction. And anything that breaks that possibility or hampers it, puts an obstacle to it, is not in the right direction. And aren't we all looking for wonderful, deep relationships? But the secret to finding the deeper level in the other is to find the deeper level within yourself. Without finding it in yourself, you can't even see it in the other. So why do we form relationships in the first place? When 2 people make a relationship, the whole is more than the sum of the parts. So it becomes a major mechanism for growth and enlightenment. Relationships really can be the source of heaven or hell. The thing is, if it's a toxic relation, usually there's no need even to cut people off. We can just grow, and usually they will fall off. And that was one of the reasons why we felt that a consciousness-based relationships course was so important. And we'll discuss more about it just now, but we'll give you really valuable tools for this type of growth. You know, there are a lot of people listening to this talk today who have a lot of advanced Vedic knowledge, but that is something completely different than having the skills and the tools to translate it into actual practical, healthy, happy, and nurturing relationships. And that's why we felt that it was so important to have a course. So here we are. Relationships start with the self. You have to remember you are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. Now let's do another self-reflection exercise. Are you willing to remember who you are? I'm not sure if you've thought about it this way. Are you willing to remember who you are? Think of a situation in a relationship where you did not act from the best version of yourself. Maybe at that time you forgot that you were the knower, the unbounded ocean of consciousness. Now, what difference would it make to this relationship if you did this now? If you started to remember who you were and started to act from the best version of yourself, you can continue to put things on your paper, in your chat box. And those of you sitting in Mary, you're not getting away with it. Put in your phones or do something. Okay. All right, let's go into hack 2. Let's look at some of the qualities of people who have good relationships. We'll look at 2. We've only got time for 2. So the first one is relinquish the need for approval. There is the greatest freedom in that. Your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. Let's remember, based on what Dr. Tony Nader was saying, is that every relationship has a knower, it's you, a process of knowing, how am I connecting, with others, and a known, the other person. That's true when you look from your perspective. You are the knower. The other person is the known. But don't forget there are two knowers in this relationship. Because when the other person is looking at you, they're the knower, and you are the known. And they can only see you through their glasses. They can only see you who they are. So don't worry about what people think of you. It actually says nothing about you. It says everything about them. Now, if you want to know about you, then look at what you think about them. Okay, how much good you can see in them. That'll tell us about you. It's a nice quote from Goethe. He says, "A man sees in the world what he carries in his heart." Now, there is a term in Vedic knowledge called object referral versus self-referral. You know, society is so full of isms and little boxes, happy to pigeonhole people into racism, homophobism, ageism, sexism, feminism. Don't value and define yourself by outside cues, because that is called object referral. Define yourself from inside out, from inside cues. That is self-referral, because it matters only that you're good with yourself. You can never please all the people all the time. And Maharishi said, we don't want to know who feels bad about us, because that might shadow our feelings for them. Our feelings should be on a high level. If his level is low, that's his responsibility. Now let's look at the second quality of people who have good relationships. Shed the burden of judgment. It's kind of similar to the first one, but it's from the opposite perspective. It's to shed the burden. Non-judging people have better relationships. You know, Nikola Tesla famously said, when you understand that every opinion is a vision loaded with personal history, you'll begin to understand that all judgment is a confession. That's quite a leveling thought. Your judgments are about you. So when you stop trying to judge everyone all the time, you'll feel much lighter. Chinese philosopher Mencius said, at birth, people are intrinsically good. Mencius believed that human nature is inherently good, and that people are born with a natural inclination towards virtue and morality. Stress is foreign to people. It's not who they intrinsically are. So we don't condemn people for their mistakes, for their negativity or their failures, for their misunderstandings, because we know this is not their real nature. It's the result of a stress buildup. One part of themselves has forgotten to be connected to its higher self. It's like a wave has suddenly forgotten that it's part of the ocean. It's just ignorance at that moment. So we need to show compassion towards that. Actually, we may not understand anything about what that person is experiencing. How can we judge them? We don't know what their circumstances are. We can't judge them. We can forgive them. And we forgive them for our own benefit. Because whatever thoughts we entertain, whatever aspects we dwell on, influences our own hearts. We don't want to focus on people's mistakes. Already they are weak. Now that will make them weaker. The most beautiful eyes are the eyes that seek beauty in others. If someone has done wrong, let that be their responsibility. You don't have to take responsibility for it. But if we judge them, we take it on ourselves. We make it our responsibility. So we're going to try and understand people from their perspective, not from our own. It's what Dr. Tony Nader also said. It's like standing in the other man's moccasins. Try to understand why they're doing what they're doing. And maybe it is something beyond their control. But another thing, very valuable point, is you can see what you can learn from their off behavior. You may really not like what you see. Learn from it. Okay. Another famous quote from Mahatma Gandhi, the weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. And finally, one other Chinese proverb, they who pursue revenge should dig 2 graves. All right, let's go to our third reflection exercise. Think for a moment, where are you suffering? Take a minute, where are you suffering for the need to have approval? You know, is this really making a problem for you? And where are you judging? And consequently, you're spoiling your relationships because of that. And of course, there's going to be a lot more opportunity to explore a lot more qualities in the course, but we only have time for 2. Now let's look at hack 3. I find this a valuable one. Look for the face behind the face. When you are trying to solve a relationship problem with someone, make sure you're working on the correct problem. Sometimes people present you with an unhappiness which is actually not the real reason they are unhappy. There's a quote by renowned British writer and scholar C.S. Lewis. He said, "I sat with my anger long enough until she told me her real name was grief." I love that quote. It's very honest. So not about anger. It was about grief. Let's say, for example, just one day, a very brief example, you're on your way to work, you're late for a meeting, it's important to get there on time, and as you pull into the driving lot, you notice there's an empty parking lot where you don't usually park, and you think, oh, I'll get there quicker. So you just put your car there, quickly rush up to the meeting, and you're on time. Then your colleague comes in a little late. At the end of the meeting, which you think went well, your colleague is very down in the mouth. And you think it's about the meeting. So you try to engage with your colleague, but they won't warm up towards you. Turns out that really what happened is you parked in their usual parking spot. And as a result of that, they came late and didn't look good at the meeting. So no amount of talking about the meeting, etc., is going to mend that until you actually apologize, to that person. So the clue here is more sensitive perception, to be a true knower. With more sensitive perception, there could be a face behind the face which you have missed up to now when you're trying to sort out your relationships. Find it, and your relationship situations could be remedied quickly. By the way, I also have had people say, I know there's a face behind the face, but I'm too scared to find it. I'm too scared to find it. Okay? And so that's also a reason we have a course. Because when you are armed with a whole armatorium of communication skills, you're not scared of dealing with these things. So one tip is when you're looking for the face behind the face, the emotional level is always more powerful than the rational level. Always look, what are people feeling? Not just what are they saying. People are always going to make their decisions based on the emotional level. Afterwards, they justify them on the rational level. And as Dr. Nader said, heart comes before the head. Okay, let's do one more self-reflection exercise. Doing these reflection exercises help you get more out of this talk. Think about it for a moment. Is there a face behind the face that you are missing in the relationship you mentioned in the beginning that you were trying to solve? Or are you trying to avoid it? All right, let's move on. Hack 4. Forgiveness as a major relationship strategy. A saint was asked, what is anger? He gave a beautiful answer. It's a punishment we give to ourselves for somebody else's mistake. The definition of forgiveness is freedom. If somebody wrongs us, we may not be able to condone it. I mean, if what they did is wrong, by our value system, it is wrong. But we forgive it. And we forgive it for ourselves. You actually have no choice. You have to forgive. Don't replay the old tape. The thing is, they hurt you once, maybe badly. Now, every time you remember, every time you revisit, they hurt you again with your permission. Don't give away your power like that. Okay, another nice Buddha quote, you'll not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. And Maharishi, in The Science of Being, in The Art of Living, he says, speech should always be on a very high level of love, admiration, and forgiveness to others. Remember, it's only heavy when you hold on to it. When you let it go, it has no weight at all. So we need to just say, it's okay. You just forgot who you were at that time. Now, this is an important point, why we wish to forgive. Okay? In consciousness-based psychology, there's an understanding that all our emotions are directed to ourselves. We are the main recipients of the emotions that we experience. We think we are projecting feelings onto others. Those people may be unaware or even indifferent to our feelings. But at the very least, they are less impacted by them than we are. Throughout time, people have always wondered, what is the relationship between the mind and the body? And the answer came in the form of the research that was done by Dr. Candace Pert of the NIH, or National Institute of Mental Health, in the 1980s. Her book, by the way, worth reading, is called Molecules of Emotion. She identified the molecular equivalent of emotions called neuropeptides and located throughout the body in the immune system. What she discovered is that every thought is not just transmitted to the next brain cell, which was previously believed. It's also received through the cell's axons and dendrites by receptor cells in the immune system throughout the body. Now, this is an extraordinary discovery, and it fills the gap that apparently separated the mind and the body. It gives real meaning to the need for emotional hygiene. All our thoughts are received by every cell of our body. All our negative, toxic thoughts poison us. Conversely, all our loving thoughts are directed to ourselves. So we always favor our positive emotions for our own sake. Okay, so that was a lot of information, and I hope you found these hacks for happy relationships interesting. You can put in the chat, if you wish, for a moment, which of these 5 hacks resonated most with you. Okay, there they are. Again, relationships start with the self, some of the qualities of people who have them, looking for the face behind the face, and forgiveness as a major relationship. Okay, so some of them are coming, they're different. Some are 1, some are 3, quite a lot for 1, 3 and 4. Okay, good. So we got some for all. Good. Now, thank you all for sharing. Thank you. Also, your lovely remarks. Thank you. Okay, so let's carry on. Now, one thing that all those hacks have in common is they're all things you do with your conscious thinking mind. They fall under the cognitive part of consciousness-based psychology. But consciousness-based psychology has therapies that are both cognitive, like the hacks we've been covering, also somatic. Addressing our relationships from a consciousness-based perspective brings in different technologies of consciousness. So what are these technologies then? For that, we had to go back to the oldest and most powerful tradition of consciousness, the Vedic tradition of India. And it's been covered more than once these days. The knowledge is thousands of years old. It's withstood the tests of time. And at the same time, it's also been researched and its value has been confirmed by modern scientific research. Now, most importantly, it includes meditation. Transcendental meditation, which most of you, I think, are already familiar with. And if you are, how blessed are we? It also includes Ayurveda, the oldest system of healthcare. Now, Ayurveda has powerful knowledge about the mind-body connection, and this is incredibly helpful for our relationships because its therapies are cognitive and somatic. It's important to know that all our emotional pain is actually stored physically. In fact, that's the purpose of pain. Why do we have pain? Because it's the body's way of making you aware there's a problem. And why does it want to make you aware that there's a problem? Because it wants you to take your consciousness there. Because consciousness heals actually better than any pharmaceutical drug. It's like the body saying, notice me, notice me, notice me, so that you take your awareness. So because what you feel, you heal. Now, we have become an anesthetized society. We're a quick fix society. We don't tolerate pain because we don't have to. We can take pills to deal with any kind of pain. We can take pills to deal with our physical pain or emotional pain. We take painkillers, anti-anxiety, antidepressants. Now, they really are useful. They are useful and needed at times. But we also don't want to miss out on nature's healing as well. So let's look at the mind-emotion-body connection. We'll dive a little deeper into this. Firstly, we know experientially that our mind and body are connected. Like if you have a stressed thought, your heart rate goes up. We can see it physically. Or other way around, we can take something physical, something chemical, like let's say alcohol. We don't see the effect physically unless we consume it in huge amounts. The main place we see the effects of a substance like alcohol is mentally and emotionally. First, we become very imaginative, then we become very dull, and then we black out. Okay, so in dealing with problematic relationships, we need to have both the cognitive approach, talking, discussioning, rational exercises, and the somatic approach. Removing the accumulated stress in the body, which can result from painful relationships or other overwhelming experiences from life. I mentioned a moment ago, our emotional pain is stored in the body. It's somatized. If we have accumulated toxicity from our failed relationships in the form of emotional wounds, frustrations, disappointments, wrong beliefs, eliminating these impurities from our mental and emotional layers is essential if we're going to have true health. Even if we understand our situation with mental insight, all the mental insight in place, the body is still holding onto that historic imprint. Now, until this life impression, stress in the system is released, it can continue to reappear when any current situation that is similar to the past one jogs your subconscious memory. We call it a past similar experience. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have had the experience? You know you are overreacting to something, but you can't help it. You keep asking yourself, why am I overreacting? Anyone have that? In fact, you don't even care that much about it rationally, but you're terribly emotional about it. Like, let's say someone is not paying you attention. Maybe you understand why they aren't, or you don't even care that much about that person, but it's upsetting you terribly. And now that is an example of a past similar experience, which is jogging your subconscious memory of another time you experienced that kind of ignoring you relationship situation. Because the stress from that is stored physically still, and it's being reactivated by the present situation. Now, once you understand the mechanism behind that, and you begin to use the somatic techniques of consciousness-based psychology to help your approach, you can take relationships to a whole new level. So that is the first way that the deep knowledge of how the mind-body connection works can make a big difference to your relationships. But now, secondly, we also want to understand the differences between people and how they conduct their relationships. This second aspect of Ayurveda, it identifies different mind-body types. And these different types really need different approaches for successful relationship. It's really a misperception that one size fits all. People are truly different. And you know, our standard reaction is to try and change people to be more like ourselves. That's our standard reaction. First of all, it's not possible. And secondly, we're going to miss out on the rich tapestry of life if we try and do that. But different mind-body types relate to people in different ways. They have different emotional needs, different communication styles, different sexual needs for romantic relationships. And in the course, we will be sensitizing you to who are you and who are you with. Because if you know yourself and other people in terms of understanding that people are unique and how you can deal with that, and also how people combine, then you can really make the most of your relationship. All right, now let's look at the Super Relationships program now. The Super Habits for Happy Relationships is a 10-week online program teaching you a consciousness approach to relationships. This course is an opportunity to take all this information that we've been covering now into a much more practical stage, deeper, and a practical way of being in the world with happy relationships. So, our goal, first of all, we want to create fundamental, hang on, where are we here? Let's look at the different parts of it. Okay, the program content, it covers 3 areas, all right? They're represented here as a triangle. First of all, the top, know yourself. We're going to help you be in touch and process your emotions and eliminate your toxic emotions. Then bottom left, we're going to cover the mind, emotion, body knowledge. You know, I've just mentioned people are different and it influences their relationships. So we will help you identify and work with your mind-body type and also what's happening in the important implications in your important relationships. And finally, communication skills. Now, we can't overemphasize the need for good communication skills. We would like everyone to do this course for this reason, because we'll teach you many advanced communication strategies which enable you to connect in a deeper and more satisfying way with people. So much time is taken thinking, oh, I wish I hadn't said that. I wish I had said that. I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I had done that. You will save so much time, money, and heartache if you get it right the first time. And it will take away so much fear, because very often people don't do things they want to do because they are frightened, because they don't feel they have the skills to approach the relationship. Everybody needs a toolkit of effective communication skills. Okay. So all these 3 areas will include theoretical knowledge, practical techniques and exercises we're going to be learning in breakout groups, through many self-reflection exercises, so we can go deeply into all this and what it means for your relationship. But we will be creating within the group a very safe, caring environment so that nobody will feel, you know, exposed or whatever. They'll be able to share to the extent they want to and examine in their own relationships, but there'll be a we create in these courses very confidential and warm and safe spaces for people to look into their habit change, their relationships, all of those. Now, my experience over many years as a psychologist, there is such a huge difference in working with people who are consciousness-based in their approach to relationships and those who are not. For decades, I've had other psychologists refer their clients to me and say, I'm stuck in my therapy. Please teach this person TM. And as soon as they've learned meditation, they're off again. And of course, the therapy can end much more quickly. In my thesis at master's degree level, we had a comparison between meditating marriages and non-meditating marriages and how they coped with their relationships. Actually, we used an inventory from the Catholic Church called Prepare, because the Catholics won't divorce people. So they're also not going to marry them unless they feel there's quite a lot of compatibility there. And what the research showed was that the meditating couples who were practicing TM did significantly better than the control group who were not meditating. So a consciousness-based approach to relationships helps so much. And finally, I just wanted to say that, when COVID started, the goal of the relationships program, let me go back there because I haven't, is first of all to create fundamental transformation in one or two selected relationships in 10 weeks, but to provide you with this toolkit that you can then take into relationships in the future, and also to help you to create super friends. When COVID started, there were millions of people living in the deepest fear. People were losing very precious loved ones, or they were separated from loved ones due to lockdown. Or the opposite, they were confined into really small spaces on top of each other for months on end, and COVID impacted relationships so much. And there is so much knowledge in the Vedas and also from the great Vedic teachers, and especially great teachers like Maharishi, on how to deal with our emotional pain and good relationships, that I put together some online programs at that time so that, especially with the meditators that could benefit from it. And I've had the joy of taking, by now, literally hundreds of people through these kinds of relationship courses and techniques over the years, and the results have been very rewarding for me to watch. Here are just a few short testimonials from a couple of clients on previous relationship courses. First, there's one by a psychologist, Tembekile Mansani. Every time I come into the sessions, I'm reminded why I wanted to be here in the first place, like it's new beginnings. I'm so excited by the techniques and exercises. I feel like God answered all my prayers and all my questions in 1.5 hours today. And at the end of the course, I will start with the material all over again, even for myself, never mind as a therapist to my clients. And then we had Nashita saying the course helped me improve my relationships, the way I communicated with loved ones, people in general. Then there was CEO, Alison. Since the course, I began to understand the purpose of a relationship is to produce bliss in both parties. And finally, I had a couple who attended the course a few times. My wife and I recently attended this course for a second time. Vicky weaves a beautiful, intricate tapestry of ancient wisdom with modern emotional well-being. Sharing her immense depth of knowledge and boundless empathy brought fields of joy to us in personal understanding and the intricacies of interpersonal relationship. And those kind of testimonials has been the greatest reward of doing these kinds of relationship courses. People are immeasurably moved and changed by them. A course on super relationship is very helpful because 85% of people still have a difficult time making change in their lives without help from like a group support. And I'm going to use that beautiful Rumi quote that Miriam used again yesterday. Whoever travels without a guide needs 200 years for a 2-day journey. Okay, so thank you. And let me hand over to Miriam now.
Thank you so much, Vicky. We are running slightly over time today. So what I propose, I just have a few more slides on how the actual program works, how you can sign up, etc. And I suggest we take maybe 1 or 2 questions and then we close the day early without a break. Is that okay? So the practical program, there's the super relationship program in itself. And that is 5 workshops of 2 hours each, live, online, on Zoom, interactive, like you've seen with breakout groups, etc. And then and it runs over 10 weeks, and during that 10 weeks, you also have a WhatsApp group for community and expert questions, etc. Then there is also the Super Habits program. So some people take just the Super Relationship program. Other people take the combined program where they first learn in the Super Relationship program what they want to change, and then they take the Super Habits program the 10 weeks after that to help them make those changes in their life. And as you heard yesterday, that's 10 weekly workshops of 1 hour each, and that also works with an accountability partner that you touch base with daily. The basic version, the Super Relationship program by itself, is $549. And the deluxe program, which combines the two, so the 20-week program, is $698. And this is all US dollars. And the Super Relationship program starts this coming Monday, actually, and then has the other 4 workshops spread over 10 weeks. And then Super Habits would then start afterwards on October 2nd and would run weekly. And the starting time for both programs is the same, 8 p.m. Standard Standard European time, which means it's kind of morning, afternoon in the US as well. And then, as we've said before, we're running this early bird discount until this Friday, or special Guru Purnima promotion is the better word for it. It runs till July 26th, so this Friday. And then you can get $100 off with this coupon code JP for Guru Purnima 100. And then the sign-up link is here. Jalal will put it in the chat, or we have the posters here with the QR code. Or you can just go to relationships.superhabits.com. It's also a very easy way. And I quickly wanted to show this coupon code. There's this box up there where you put the code, and you have to actually press the button, the apply coupon button, and then you'll see it deducted there in the end. And with that, that is the summary, and we're so excited to be working with Dr. Vicky on this, because it's just such a beautiful knowledge. As we've been working on preparing the actual course, I'm just so excited about it, and I think so many people will get so much out of it. So with that, let's pass it back to Anna Marijke. Yeah.
Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Broom and Miriam Lodge, for this heartfelt and very inspiring presentation on happy and super relationships. So thank you so much. Now, since, we're diving right through in this afternoon, and I think we really enjoyed diving deeper and giving you really a taste of what it feels like to engage with the material of relationships in the context of consciousness and really unpacking it from the level of consciousness. So with that, I'd like to invite Dr. Nader to add any comments and inspirational points, and then, as we said, we'll take just a few questions. So if you have a burning question, please put them in the Q&A window online. And if anyone here with us would like to pass forward a question, just write them up and pass them to the front. So over to you, Dr. Nader.
The main comment I feel to make is to thank Dr. Vicky Broom for brilliant thinking throughout time. She has been a deep knower of reality with transcendental meditation programs that she offered. And additional to that, she has all this coaching and knowledge and scientific background on which she bases her help. And it's a great joy to see with all those leaders in our great family. This is a wonderful Maharishi family of people who practice transcendence, to see so much talent and knowledge that can be applied to help everyone come back to themselves from whatever angle they start, through whatever door they enter. And relationships is something that is ubiquitous, it's everywhere. As we have thought and discussed, everything that we do is a relationship. Every experience that we have is a relationship between us and the environment, the music we hear, the people we encounter, even the objects. Everything is really a relationship, because all of life is based on knower, knowing, and known, which is a basic constituent of natural law due to the nature of consciousness as being conscious and reflecting on itself. And it reflects on itself in these infinite ways and builds up these puzzles that ultimately build up the pieces of the puzzles coming together to see the whole and to go back to fullness of life. And so every moment of our life is a relationship, and every moment can be made better through improving ourselves, and that is the primary value of transcending, going back to the self, raising ourselves in the highest possible way into cosmic consciousness, raising our relationship with the environment, which is in God consciousness, and then raising the object of perception to that same level of ourself. So we see the object as ourself, which is unity consciousness. And so consciousness-based relationship is the fulfillment of all relationships. And I'm really feeling fulfilled and grateful for all those involved in this Consciousness Advisor program. And in this particular case, Dr. Vicky Broom and Miriam and Damien and everyone contributing to structure the course and make it available. So I encourage everyone to actually take this course, whether they are long-time meditators or not. It really brings very important values and insights. It's really knowledge, it's true knowledge. And we will be hearing later from Dr. Chris and Ann Crowell about how the teaching, the supreme teaching in the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, how the Krishna value, which means the value of wholeness, guides individuals, in this case a particular very highly awake and alert individual, to have the best relationship and the best means of acquiring knowledge and action and behavior. So there is profound knowledge from ancient tradition, and thanks to those great leaders and experts, it's being put in simple terms in the language of time. As Miriam said at the beginning, it's really speaking a language. You know, you go to France, you speak French, go to Japan, you speak Japanese, to China, Chinese. And of course, most people are now speaking English everywhere. But this is a language, and we translate that language of pure knowledge into understanding it in the common semantics and logics and language of today. And that's what it really is. And the wisdom is eternal, and life always evolves in greater and greater steps of fulfillment. As Maharishi says, the meaning of life is the expansion of happiness. So thank you again, and we won't be having a long break, but as Anna Mareka said, let's take a couple of questions maybe, as we have Dr. Broom available with us today.
Beautiful. Thank you. And yeah, we start with one question. I think that is a quite fundamental question in terms of relationships. What can we do with the relationship if they really got broken, and if we don't have a chance to fix them but would like to do so? Anyone would like to comment from the panel?
I could comment if you like.
Yes, Dr. Broom, please.
Okay, so actually it's one of the techniques that we cover on the course. You see, obviously, the most important, most valuable way to fix a relationship is through communication. But if you do not have access to communication, which is, as I'm understanding, that the person, you can't access the person. So we teach a thing called the talk table. You know, if you pull one leg, the whole table will come along. So talk stands for talk and communicate. And A stands for avoid. In a situation, if you're trying to fix it, don't be negative or gossiping and so on, because if you do fix it, it'll come back and haunt you later. But normally what we would try to do is keep contact with that person and do things together. Do things that have some commonality, the sort of what we call Me Too things, you know, things where we are at Guru Purnima together or something. But if you can't, it sounds to me like you can't either talk or you can't even do things with that person. You can love them. You can always love them. And that's the last talk. It's the last leg of the table, because love has a unifying power. It doesn't matter whether you're with them or not with them. You have to love them. You have to see the best aspect of themselves, because that will begin to affect the others. When you start to do that, you will find they will become more open to sharing an experience with you or actually talking with you. And then, of course, it's good to have skills of how to talk. But you can always do that. And even for your own sake, all love is directed to the self. We always love for our own sake. You know, it says that in the Vedas. It's not for the sake of the wife that the wife is dear to the husband. It's not for the sake of the wife that the wife is dear to the husband. It's for the sake of the husband. So the person who does the loving, so you just want to love these people. You know, it's never too late to, you might not be able to change the past, but you can change the future. So that's what I would suggest is the best strategy for right now, if that's all that's open to you.
Beautiful. Yes, thank you so much. And on that note, I think there are some questions regarding actually the concept of consciousness in terms of relationships. And as we relate, there was one, that Maharshi always referred to often too in terms of the growth of consciousness. When we grow in unity consciousness, the whole is more than the sum of the parts. Now, in the relationship context, how do we understand what is the more?
What is, Dr. Nader, you want to cover that?
Again, yes. So it's like you have a puzzle, and every piece of the puzzle is a part. And when you put 2 parts together, 3 parts together, 4 parts together, it's not just the sum of parts, you get a picture. And the picture is more than the sum of just adding separately the parts. So there is a relationship between the parts, and that relationship is an additional value to the individual parts being simply summed up. So that is again brings us back to relationship, which is the building blocks of life add new dimensions of understanding, and that if you see something and you say it's beautiful, you see something and you say it is enjoyable, you see something and you say it's inspiring, you see something and you say something else, and then you put all of this together and you have something more, an experience of wholeness, an experience of being that cannot be only defined by the specific ingredients or constituents of the individual parts that constitute the whole. You know, in a machine, for example, there are different things that do different parts. One is, maybe mechanical rotation, the other is have a hydraulic something or whatever, the one is heating, the one is cooling, the one is... So these are parts, but they create, for example, an airplane, or they create a car. And an airplane is more than the sum of just individual electrical and mechanical things, and an airplane can fly. And so in relationships, it's also like that as you add up components and clarity of parts and exposure to different parts, you become more than just the sum of the parts.
If I might just add one beautiful quote. There's a quote which says that the student said to the teacher, "How should we treat others?" And the teacher said, "There are no others." It's very nice in terms of unity consciousness.
Yes, it's a beautiful picture that we're painting that is bigger than the individual self as we grow in love too, that unifies. Now, in that sense, I think some of you who are connected with us, there is a concern too in the world as it goes through these transformations, and how do we forgive, and how can we forgive people such as politicians or others who may have killed other people or stole a country or have done some crime? How and do we have to forgive those people?
Do you want me to answer? We have to forgive them for our sake. We have to forgive them. We can't, because it's not good for us not to. And there will be, obviously, a cosmic jurisdiction. We don't have to worry about that part. But it's from our sake, it's good for us to forgive. Not that it's right, it's wrong. It's totally wrong. But the forgiveness, a bit like what I covered, is for our own sake. So it's healthy for us to forgive.
Beautiful. Yes. And I think we have there are some beautiful, very expansive questions coming in terms of consciousness. And while we have Dr. Nader with us, maybe one more expansive question. Does the absolute consciousness still expand, or does it already know everything there is and that can be and will be? And how does that relate to relationships as we connect with others?
The absolute consciousness is all that there is. So we are that, everything is that, every relationship is that. And it has two aspects to it, as described in the book Consciousness is All There Is, and based on Maharishi's teaching and the Vedic tradition. And this aspect, one is unmanifest and one is manifest. The unmanifest contains within it all possibilities. So it knows everything, it experiences everything. It looks at itself from all infinite possibilities. However, since it is the absolute, it looks at them with this absolute perspective. And when it looks at them, I say when, but when leads to the sense of as if at some point it happened, but we have to use terminology and language, and it requires that we use these things. So it doesn't mean there is a point in time when it starts to, because in the absolute, everything is simultaneous. So that's a whole other topic. However, as it looks, let's say, as it looks at itself from specific perspectives, then this is what we call manifestation. And so all of these manifestations are only limited perspectives that the Absolute takes on itself by forgetting for a moment, if you like, during the moment of experience, or putting behind the scenes or hiding. That's what the Chandas term, Chandas means, for those who are familiar, the object quality. So the object quality is that object means that which hides the absolute. And so the absolute is hidden by the object of perception and gives a quality to the object of existence, which is in a limited perspective in order to be experiencing from a limited perspective. So, to summarize again, without confusing you too much, it's all detailed in the book, but it takes a few pages of reading to really just sort it out and a few moments of thinking. Basically to say the nature of life, the nature of being, the nature of the absolute is consciousness, which means to be conscious, and to be conscious in all possible ways, in infinite ways and in limited ways. To be conscious in limited ways, you have to let the absolute infinite vision go in the background and actually be literally forgotten. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fair to say that you are actually seeing from a truly limited way. Again, the nature of the absolute is to experience from all possible ways. These all possible ways include limited ways. And these limited ways are you and me and everyone and everything in the universe, in the manifest universe, where we actually experience things in a limited perspective. We don't know that we are the absolute when we are in a state of ignorance of the reality of life. We know only to some extent that we have a certain abilities and like that. When we transcend, we experience ourselves as the absolute, and then we are what we say liberated or enlightened, which means we come to the level of experience of knowing reality. Reality is that everything is consciousness. Everything is that absolute. And however, throughout life, we have different relationships, different exposures to different other, if you like, loci of consciousness or individual ways of existing in consciousness. And we perceive them as object and separate from the absolute. We perceive ourselves as separate. As we grow in experience and gain more knowledge and build more the whole picture of reality, we come to realize that we are the absolute and everything is the absolute. Through these relationships, we add gradual knowledge of reality, and if those relationships help us grow in unity, this is why people say love and love and love is so important, because love is a unifying power. And when you are in a relationship and there is love in it, you are actually in a sort of unity consciousness. You see the other, which is a different object as yourself. That's what really true love is, which is to see the other as oneself. And that is the complete love. And that is one drop, one moment or moments of unity. And that is why love is so praised and so talked about and so wanted and all of that, simply because it adds these moments of unity, these experiences of unity with somebody or something that is on the surface level appearing as different. And then when you reach God consciousness where the heart is full, then you start to feel more and more one with everything. And in unity consciousness, that is supreme love really, where you surrender and you understand everything is actually myself. And this is how relationships that are built on the level of growing unity, so really love in that sense, even with objects, it's not like you fall in love with an object, but your relationship is on the linking level, on the connecting level, then this is how you fulfill the purpose of life and living, by reaching that infinite state of unity and oneness. So that's how relationships are, and guiding ourselves through relationship is very, very important. And again, something we cannot repeat enough. All these points about relationship, all these points about how to do it, what to do it, all the advice and guidance actually happen more and more spontaneously and naturally as we grow in consciousness. Because as we grow in consciousness, we grow in unity, and spontaneously we start behaving in all those ways that are mentioned. And that is why for the longest time, Maharishi has emphasized transcending, transcending, transcending. Even if at the beginning of the movement, you ask about even Ayurveda, or you ask about Jyotish, and he'd say, no, 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 don't get there, don't do that. Just transcend, just transcend. And then he felt, well, now that the transcendence principle is well established, we have to help people even during their daily activity and give them the proper diet, the proper routine, the proper connection with the environment, near environment, far environment, and continuing in knowledge and experience. And that is why we are doing all of this: purpose, relationship, habits, and all of that, so that there is a support for that process, even during daily activity. And again, you know, if everybody transcends and gets into that level, all these other things will spontaneously and naturally happen. That's why our programs are never fully effective until people actually practice transcendental meditation truly. But again, I'm repeating what we've said, and we continue to say all along, these are different doors, different ways to enter into the transcendence, even for those who are not ready. But for those who are practicing also transcendental meditation, it would be very nice during the day to have some ideas, some thoughts, some hints, some hacks, as they like to call them, so that the activity is fulfilling and conducive to better relationship, better habits, etc.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nader. I feel that really brought us back to wholeness on this beautiful journey that we have been on, and reminding us always coming back to the key principles of consciousness. And I think with that, we can fulfillingly conclude our 6th session on applying the knowledge of consciousness to create happy relationships. And I'd like to thank again all our speakers and panelists, of course, first and foremost, Dr. Tony Nader, Dr. Vicky Broom, Damien and Miriam Lodge, and everyone who's helping behind the scene to make this assembly so fulfilling and successful. Now, our next session, we will dive right into actually some further exciting projects around the world, including new and exciting research projects and initiatives from the David Lynch Foundation. So we'll have a beautiful session and some reflections on the Consciousness Advisor Program in the light of Mahari's teaching principles from one of the most ancient and most commented Vedic texts, the Bhagavad Gita. So make sure that you join us again, and we'll meet at 8 p.m. Central European Summer Time, and look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.